Donald Trump is back in the Oval Office, and the world is once again feeling the impact of his unconventional approach to foreign policy. From the outset of his presidency, Trump has displayed a penchant for swift and decisive action, often eschewing traditional diplomatic channels in favor of direct confrontation and displays of strength. This approach, while yielding mixed results, has become a hallmark of his presidency, a potent blend of calculated risk-taking and unpredictable brinkmanship. Trump's foreign policy is characterized by a deep skepticism of multilateralism and a firm belief in American exceptionalism. He views international relations as a zero-sum game, where concessions are seen as weakness and strength is paramount. This worldview is evident in his dealings with allies and adversaries alike, from his withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord to his imposition of tariffs on Chinese goods. Trump's impatience with diplomacy is rooted in his belief that the United States has been taken advantage of in the past. He sees previous administrations as having been too willing to compromise American interests in the pursuit of global consensus. This perception fuels his desire to shake up the established order and assert American dominance on the world stage. Whether this approach will ultimately prove successful remains to be seen. However, one thing is certain. Trump's return to the White House ensures that the world will be watching closely, bracing itself for the next dramatic chapter in his turbulent presidency. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the Iran nuclear deal, stands as a stark example of Trump's disruptive approach to international affairs. Brokered after years of painstaking diplomacy by the Obama administration and its international partners, the JCPOA was hailed by many as a landmark achievement in non-proliferation. It offered Iran a path out of crippling economic sanctions in exchange for verifiable limits on its nuclear program. Trump, however, viewed the deal as fundamentally flawed, arguing that it did not go far enough in curbing Iran's nuclear ambitions or addressing its ballistic missile program and regional activities. He saw it as a gift to a regime he considered hostile to American interests, a symbol of what he perceived as the previous administration's weakness and appeasement. In 2018, Trump made good on his campaign promise to withdraw the United States from the JCPOA, much to the dismay of European allies who had been instrumental in its negotiation. The decision sent shockwaves through the international community, casting a long shadow over the future of nuclear diplomacy and reigniting tensions with Iran. The collapse of the JCPOA has had far-reaching consequences. It has emboldened hardliners within Iran who now view the United States as an unreliable negotiating partner. It has also complicated efforts to address Iran's other destabilizing activities in the region, such as its support for proxy militias. Since the US withdrawal from the JCPOA, Iran has steadily chipped away at the restrictions imposed by the deal, gradually escalating its nuclear activities. This calculated strategy is seemingly designed to pressure the international community into providing sanctions relief while simultaneously advancing Iran's nuclear capabilities. Iran's enrichment of uranium to 60% purity, a level significantly closer to weapons grade, has raised alarm bells worldwide. While Iranian officials maintain that their nuclear program is solely for peaceful purposes, the country's growing stockpile of enriched uranium and its installation of advanced centrifuges have heightened concerns that Iran is edging closer to the capacity to produce nuclear weapons. Adding to the tension, Iran's decision to restrict IAEA access to its nuclear facilities has further eroded trust and fueled suspicions about the true nature of its nuclear program. This lack of transparency makes it increasingly difficult to verify Iran's compliance with its safeguards obligations and raises the specter of clandestine nuclear activities taking place beyond the reach of international inspectors. Despite his hardline stance on Iran, Trump has surprised many by extending an olive branch, albeit one wrapped in barbed wire. He has publicly stated his willingness to engage in direct talks with Iranian leaders, even going so far as to send a personal letter to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei proposing negotiations. However, Trump's diplomatic overture is accompanied by a clear and unambiguous threat. If talks fail to produce a swift and favorable outcome, the United States will not hesitate to resort to military action. This two-pronged approach, combining the allure of diplomacy with the looming threat of force, is classic Trump. It is a high-stakes gamble aimed at forcing Iran to the negotiating table and extracting concessions that eluded his predecessors. Whether this strategy will succeed is anyone's guess. Iran has repeatedly stated that it will not negotiate under duress, and the Trump administration's aggressive rhetoric and actions have done little to foster an environment conducive to productive dialogue. Section 5. Iran at a crossroads, to negotiate or to resist. The reimposition of US sanctions has taken a heavy toll on Iran's economy, plunging the country into recession and fueling social unrest. The Iranian rial has plummeted in value, inflation has soared, and access to essential goods and services has been severely curtailed. This dire economic situation has created a powerful incentive for Iran to seek a negotiated solution to the nuclear standoff. Many within the Iranian government, particularly those focused on economic recovery, recognize that sanctions relief is crucial for the country's long-term stability and prosperity. However, the decision of whether to negotiate with the United States is not solely driven by economic considerations. Iran's clerical leadership, headed by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, remains deeply suspicious of American intentions and wary of making concessions that could be seen as a sign of weakness. This internal struggle between pragmatists and hardliners has created a complex political calculus within Iran. The country is at a crossroads, caught between the desire for economic relief and the fear of compromising its principles and national pride. Section 6. A bridge too far. The uncompromising demands of the United States and Israel. The United States and Israel, staunch allies with a shared distrust of Iran, present a united front in demanding a complete and verifiable dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. They view any pathway to a nuclear-armed Iran as an existential threat and have vowed to take all necessary measures to prevent such an outcome. The Trump administration's demands go beyond the scope of the JCPOA. In addition to a complete cessation of uranium enrichment, the United States is seeking an end to Iran's ballistic missile program, its support for regional proxies, and its human rights abuses. Israel, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has long viewed Iran as its arch-nemesis and has repeatedly threatened unilateral military action to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Netanyahu has publicly urged the Trump administration to adopt a more aggressive posture towards Iran and has made it clear that Israel will not tolerate a nuclear-armed Iran. These uncompromising demands, coupled with the threat of military action, present a significant challenge for Iran. The prospect of completely abandoning its nuclear program, which it views as a matter of national pride and a deterrent against foreign aggression, is a difficult pill for Iran to swallow. Section 7. The spectre of war. When diplomacy fails, what remains? The failure of diplomacy to resolve the Iranian nuclear issue raises the spectre of military conflict, a prospect with potentially catastrophic consequences for the region and beyond. While all sides have expressed a preference for a peaceful resolution, the risk of miscalculation or unintended escalation remains high. The United States possesses overwhelming military superiority over Iran, but any military strike against Iran's nuclear facilities would be fraught with risk. Iran has vowed to retaliate against any attack, potentially targeting US forces in the region, Israel or American allies. Moreover, a military strike would likely only delay rather than eliminate Iran's nuclear ambitions. It could also further destabilize the region, inflame anti-American sentiment, and strengthen the hand of hardliners within Iran. The international community has a vital role to play in preventing a catastrophic war. Diplomatic efforts must be intensified with a focus on de-escalating tensions, building trust, and finding a negotiated solution that addresses the legitimate security concerns of all parties. Section 8. The perils of haste. Can peace be rushed? Trump's self-imposed 2-month deadline for a deal with Iran raises concerns about the efficacy of rushed diplomacy. The complexities of the Iranian nuclear issue, coupled with the deep mistrust between the parties, necessitate a patient and measured approach. The JCPOA, which took over a decade of negotiations to finalize, serves as a stark reminder that sustainable solutions to complex international challenges cannot be achieved overnight. Rushing the process increases the likelihood of overlooking critical details, misinterpreting intentions, and ultimately reaching an agreement that fails to address the core issues at stake. Moreover, artificial deadlines can be counterproductive, creating unnecessary pressure and reducing the incentive for parties to engage in good faith negotiations. They can also embolden hardliners who may be less inclined to compromise when faced with ultimatums. A more prudent approach would involve establishing a realistic time frame for negotiations that allows for thorough discussions, expert consultations, and the gradual building of trust. Section 9. A legacy of uncertainty, the long shadow of Trump's gamble. Trump's high-stakes gamble with Iran casts a long shadow over the future of the Middle East and the global non-proliferation regime. His decision to withdraw from the JCPOA and reimpose sanctions has exacerbated tensions, eroded trust, and increased the risk of conflict. The outcome of Trump's gamble remains uncertain. It is possible that his aggressive approach will succeed in forcing Iran back to the negotiating table and extracting significant concessions. However, it is equally plausible that his actions will backfire, pushing Iran further down the path of nuclear proliferation and making a military confrontation more likely. The stakes could not be higher. The world watches with bated breath, hoping that diplomacy will prevail and that a peaceful resolution to the Iranian nuclear crisis can be found. The legacy of Trump's presidency and the security of future generations may hinge on the outcome.